It was a chilly Friday evening, and Emma found herself alone at home for the first time in months. Her parents had gone on a weekend trip, leaving her to look after the house. She didn't mind. In fact, she was looking forward to some time alone. Emma planned a quiet evening with a movie and some snacks, thinking it would be just another normal night. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the empty house, Emma curled up on the couch and started watching an old horror film. Halfway through the movie, she heard a faint knocking sound. It came from the back door. Startled, she paused the movie and listened carefully. Silence. Thinking it was just her imagination, she brushed it off and resumed the film. Minutes later, the knocking returned, louder this time. Emma's heart began to race. She muted the television and sat still, ears straining. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was persistent, coming from the back door that led to the dark backyard. Emma hesitated but decided to check. She grabbed her phone and a kitchen knife, just in case. When she reached the back door, she cautiously peeked through the small window. There was no one there. She unlocked the door and opened it just a crack, the cold air from outside rushing in. Still, no one. Maybe it was the wind, she thought, trying to convince herself that nothing was wrong. She locked the door again and returned to the living room, feeling a little unsettled but determined not to let her nerves get the best of her. As the night dragged on, strange noises continued. A faint scratching at the windows, the sound of footsteps upstairs, even though she was sure she was the only one in the house. Emma's mind raced with possibilities. Was it an animal, a prank, or something more sinister? Then her phone buzzed. A text message. It was from an unknown number. "I'm watching you." Emma froze. Her hands trembled as she read the message again. Was this some sort of sick joke? She quickly texted back, "Who is this?" No response. Panic started to set in. She dialed her parents' number, but the call went straight to voicemail. She considered calling the police but hesitated, not wanting to overreact if it was just someone playing a prank. But the fear gnawed at her. She locked every door and window in the house and turned off all the lights, hoping that whoever had sent the message would go away. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from upstairs. Emma jumped out of her skin. Someone, or something, was inside the house. Her breath caught in her throat as she listened to the sound of heavy footsteps slowly moving across the second floor. They were deliberate, as if whoever was up there wanted her to hear them. Emma grabbed her phone and quietly crept toward the front door. But just as she was about to unlock it, she heard the footsteps again, this time coming down the stairs. She turned to look, and there, at the top of the staircase, was a shadowy figure, tall with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. It didn't move, just stood there watching her. Terror gripped her. Emma bolted for the door, fumbling with the lock, her heart pounding in her ears. The footsteps behind her quickened, thudding down the stairs. She flung the door open and ran outside into the cold night air, sprinting down the street without looking back. She didn't stop running until she reached her neighbor's house. Banging on the door frantically, she prayed someone would answer. After what felt like an eternity, the door opened, and her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, appeared. "Emma, what's wrong?" Mrs. Thompson asked, concerned. Emma, out of breath and shaking, tried to explain what had happened. Mrs. Thompson let her in and called the police. When they arrived and searched Emma's house, they found nothing. No intruder, no signs of forced entry, no evidence of anyone being there at all. The police assured her that it was probably just a prank, but Emma knew what she saw. The figure at the top of the stairs, the glowing eyes, they were real. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, her parents returned home, and Emma moved on, though the fear never quite left her. Months passed, and she tried to forget the incident, until one night, as she lay in bed, her phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. "I'm still watching you." Weeks passed since Emma received the second text message. Every night she was on edge, checking her phone repeatedly, scanning the dark corners of her room before going to bed. She had changed her number, hoping that would stop whoever or whatever was tormenting her. For a while it seemed to work. The silence was comforting, but deep down, she knew it wouldn't last. One Friday evening, her parents went out for dinner, leaving her alone once more. The house felt colder than usual, and the quiet was suffocating. Emma distracted herself with schoolwork and music, trying to drown out the creeping fear that had settled in the pit of her stomach. Around 9 p.m., her phone buzzed. She hesitated, staring at it as it vibrated on her desk. With trembling fingers, she picked it up. A notification from an unknown number again. "I'm closer now." Emma's blood ran cold. The feeling of being watched returned, stronger than before. Her breathing quickened, and she glanced nervously around her room. The door was closed, but the unease crept in from every corner. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the house. Emma froze. It was coming from the basement, that dark and unused part of the house her parents never went into. It hadn't crossed her mind before, but now it felt like a gateway to something terrifying. She tried to brush it off, telling herself it was just the old pipes. But then came another thud, louder, more insistent, as if something was trying to escape from below. Emma's phone buzzed again, this time a simple message. "Come downstairs." Her pulse quickened as panic surged through her. How could this person know she was upstairs? What did they want from her? She stood paralyzed, unsure of what to do. Calling the police seemed like an option, but they hadn't found anything last time. Would they believe her again? The basement door creaked open, ever so slowly. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't touched it. She stood rooted in place as the door swung wide, revealing a yawning darkness at the bottom of the stairs. From the shadows, a soft whisper drifted up, faint but unmistakable. "Emma." Her name echoed through the stillness, as though the house itself was calling to her. The lights flickered, plunging the room into brief, chilling darkness before coming back on. Emma's hands trembled. She couldn't ignore it any longer. Grabbing the same kitchen knife she had used before, she decided to confront whatever was happening head-on. She couldn't live in fear forever. Emma approached the basement door cautiously, each step feeling heavier than the last. The cold air from below seemed to pull her in as if something was waiting for her down there. When she reached the top of the staircase, she hesitated. The darkness below was impenetrable. She turned on the light, but it flickered out almost immediately, leaving only shadows. Taking a deep breath, she stepped down into the basement, gripping the knife tightly. The stairs creaked beneath her weight, and the musty smell of the basement wrapped around her like a thick fog. Halfway down, her phone buzzed again. She checked the screen, her heart pounding. Another message, "I'm waiting." She stopped at the bottom of the stairs. The basement was silent, empty, except for the old furniture and boxes her family had long forgotten about. But something was off. The air was colder here, unnaturally so, and there was a lingering sense of something unseen lurking just beyond her field of vision. Suddenly, a shadow shifted in the corner of the room. Emma squinted, trying to make out the shape. It was tall, human-like, but it moved with unnatural speed and grace. Before she could react, the figure darted toward her, vanishing into the darkness behind the boxes. Emma stumbled back, her heart racing, knife raised defensively. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice shaky but determined. There was no response, only silence. Just as she was about to turn and flee back upstairs, the figure appeared again, this time directly in front of her. It was tall, much taller than she had expected, with glowing eyes, those same eyes that had watched her from the top of the stairs that night. But this time, they were closer, too close. Emma screamed and swung the knife, but it passed through nothing. The figure was gone, as if it had melted into the shadows. Her breathing was ragged, panic setting in. She backed up toward the stairs, but then from behind her, a cold hand grabbed her shoulder. She spun around, slashing wildly with the knife, but there was no one there, only the darkness and the cold. Her phone buzzed once more, and she glanced at it with wide, terrified eyes. "You can't escape me." Emma bolted for the stairs, her legs feeling like lead as she scrambled up to the safety of the living room. She slammed the basement door shut and locked it, pressing her back against it as if that would keep whatever was down there from getting out. Her phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't a text. It was a call. The unknown number flashed on the screen. Emma stared at it, paralyzed by fear. After a moment of hesitation, she answered, holding the phone to her ear. At first, there was only static on the other end. Then, a voice, soft, eerie, and unmistakable, whispered, "I'm inside your house." The call ended. Emma's heart stopped. Slowly, she turned her head toward the living room. There, in the corner, just barely visible in the dim light, stood the figure. Tall, with glowing eyes, watching her. The door behind her creaked open, and a cold wind blew through the house.